Hi, we're going to talk about ethics and professionalism in early childhood programs today. A lot of this PowerPoint is based on the work that NIAC has done on ethical responsibilities. That's what they're really kind of known for. And NIAC is a really large national organization that we have for the education of young children here in the United States. They put on a lot of trainings, they do national conferences, and they also have their own publishing wing as well. And so they actually kind of literally wrote the book on ethics in early childhood education. You have an image right here called Ethics in the Early Childhood Educator. I'm also going to show you some other free resources and some resources that you might want to pay for if this is an area of concern. I think it should all be our concern, but it's also if you need some support in training your staff or working with your staff when it comes to the idea of ethics, then please check out this book. I highly recommend it. Some of the work that I've used today has come from these three authors: Stephanie Feeney, Nancy Freeman, and Peter Pizzolongo. It's definitely a great resource, and they are really renowned for having a good take on handling ethical dilemmas that we're going to talk about today. At the very end, I'm going to talk about ethics for coaching, mentoring, and that supervisor-employee ethical challenges. We've talked about it throughout the entire class. Just the idea that your staff needs to know which hat you're wearing. You know, are you coming to them as a coach, a mentor, a supervisor, employer? Because each one is going to have their own ethical standards or conduct that they need to have with a adult learner. So the definition of the ethics is, I think we should just start off with that. It's way people behave based on their beliefs, their attitudes, their knowledge, and their values about what is right and wrong. It comes from the idea of ethos, meaning character, or what a good person does or does not do. And once again, ethics is going to have a lot of cultural standards as well. So we all have a specific culture that we were raised in. So our values, beliefs, and attitudes we've been socialized into having those values, beliefs, attitudes, and knowledge. And that also impacts what people think is the right decision in any kind of ethical or moral dilemma. In the workplace, we're going to have to deal not only with our employees who are coming from possible different cultural backgrounds, but also families, teachers, and just other peoples like a board or a program supervisor or another nonprofit. Anybody that you're also working with are going to have varying ideas of what is right and wrong. So what should you do? Because you're going to have your own ethical standards as well, and you shouldn't devalue those. Yours are very important as well. But how do you work with people who maybe have different ideas about how to approach any type of parenting situation or workplace competition or rivalry issue as well? I think it's nice to have a clear-cut policy about how you approach ethical dilemmas, or have the code of ethical conduct or statement of commitment from NIAC, something like that that's clear for employees and families as well, so they know where you stand on how you make decisions based on ethics. This will also help employees make real-time choices that align with your program's values. So if you guys are on the same page generally with ethical ideas, and typically in our field, that means that we kind of prioritize the child first, and whatever is best for the child is typically where we are aligned with in our ethical standards. That can help them make real-time choices, but they're always probably going to need to involve an administrator and a mentor and a coach in real ethical dilemmas, which can be very, very difficult to resolve. I would probably say that in our field, once again, it's the protection and provision for children. Protection, once again, protecting them, making sure that they grow up safe and healthy and free from abuse or violence. And then provision, we provide for children. So what do we provide? We typically provide healthy and safe educational experiences for children. So that's typically our moral grounding. But I wanted to give you a little bit more information on what ethics are as well. Typically, and this comes from Freeman and Feeney in their ethical book, the first question you should ask yourself is, does it concern right and wrong, rights and responsibilities, human welfare, or an individual's best interests? And typically when we're looking at an individual's best interests, we're looking at the child. If you answer no to any of these items, the situation is not an ethical issue and you can handle it as you would any workplace concern. And that doesn't mean that you don't spend time or you work with people or you're sensitive or you use good communication. It just means that it's not generally an ethical issue. It's just maybe a conduct issue or a performance issue. If you do answer yes, so it does concern right and wrong, it does concern rights and responsibilities, it does concern human welfare or somebody's best interest, then you're facing an ethical issue. And how you respond to it depends on whether it's an ethical responsibility or an ethical dilemma. So ethical responsibilities are typically mandates that describe how educators are required to act and what they must do and must not do. So we must not hurt children and we must protect and provide them. A dilemma is a situation for which there are two possible resolutions, each of which can be justified in moral terms. So if you do one or the other, you can justify it with ethics that you think this is the right decision. And it typically requires a person to choose between those two actions, and they're always going to have a cost and a benefit. So there might be a ethical cost to it, but there will also be an ethical benefit, and that's why this is so difficult. And this is why humans, since we could first communicate to each other back in hunter-gatherer times, have had ethical conundrums, dilemmas, and responsibilities. So when we're solving a dilemma, let's find out what the real root of the problem is. So if it's an ethical issue, does it involve ethical responsibilities, or is it an ethical dilemma? Once again, going back to that first page, of a responsibility are just kind of our mandates, what we must do, and a dilemma is making a choice between two things, both of which could have a moral justification. Let's analyze the dilemma as well. So what's our conflicting responsibilities? Because you could have a conflicting responsibility between protecting a child and then also valuing supporting at-risk families. So that could be two different conflicting responsibilities that you might have, and it would be difficult to make a decision. It's good to always brainstorm as many possible resolutions, and then this is where it's great to use your network or use people you work with or use people who have a deeper understanding of the relationship, because there could be, and hopefully there might be, different resolutions that you haven't considered but somebody else would, and they would be willing to support you in coming up with possible solutions to the dilemma. I'll go into more what the NIAC code is, but it's great they have an ideals and principles part, and they go into detail, and I'll show you the website later where you can look at some of this. And this would be a helpful way to kind of ground your idea about ethics. So why is this kind of violating your idea of right or wrong? And seeing where it is written down can also give you some justification and some work to use with families as well. Based on your review of the code and using your best professional judgment, describe what you think is the most ethically understandable course of action. So ethically, this aligns with your kind of moral idea of what is right and wrong. So an example would be a family has a set of boy and girl twins. The family asks you to please have the girl twin stay inside. She can't go outside, but they really would like her to be inside and be out of the sun, and encourage her in art and the pretend play area. They don't want her to play blocks. They don't want her to be in the sandbox at all in case she gets dirty or messy. And they also mention that she cleans up a lot at home, and they want her to throw away her twin brother's trash after lunch. So he can get up and go take a nap, and they would like her to clean up after her twin brother. So we have some conflicting ethical responsibilities. Are we wishing to honor a parent's cultural values if we've established that it's cultural, or it could just be their particular individual ideas about what gender roles, or it could be cultural. And we also have the idea and our responsibility of allowing children autonomy and self-direction in a classroom. Typically, when we structure our classrooms in any educational environment, nothing is off limits. You might have a locked cupboard at the very top that might have all of the paint or scissors or things that you're not currently using. But for the most part, if it's down at the child's level or if it's in the classroom at their level, they're allowed to use it as they wish. So that would be why you might have an issue with this. A dilemma would be allow the family to socialize their child at school within those narrow gender roles, or are you going to allow the child to have more self-direction and also have more American gender roles? So then you would analyze, what are your responsibilities to both the child and to the family and to yourself, and to your ideas of ethical standards, and what decisions can you make and how will it play out or affect all involved? So if you were saying, well, you're not going to do that, would the family disenroll? If you say you are going to do that, how would the staff react to having those particular gender roles, and how would other families react? Brainstorm and discuss with others, look at the NIAC Code of Conduct, and speak with others to get different points of view or perspectives. Because once again, I'm not going to tell you what I would do, because my ethical standards are going to be different than yours. And yours are going to be different depending on who you are, your culture, your background, and the program that you're running as well. So it's important that you know that there's going to be a cost and a benefit to any ethical decision that you are basically forced to make. So this is the Code of Ethical Conduct. So this is a poster that you can get, and it's typically very prevalent in most early childhood education programs because it's a statement of commitment. I typically have my employees read and sign this as part of onboarding whenever they start working. And we go over what never harming children means and ensuring that programs for young children are based on current knowledge and research. So I go into depth on all of these, and I also take them through the NIAC website like I'm about to do for you guys. But I think it's important to know and to understand what my ethical standards are so that I can also pass it on to my employees, especially future employees, so that if they don't agree with me, we are either on the same page or they possibly choose somewhere else to work if that's going to be an issue for them. NIAC website also has great dilemma questions, so they'll periodically release a dilemma from the classroom, and you can read in depth about how the teachers in that particular situation made a critical ethical decision based on that issue. So it might be children taking naps, or children drinking milk, or staff using cell phones. So make sure to let your teachers know that you want to be informed about ethical issues and dilemmas as well. And they're not alone in this type of thing. So if they're having a difficult time making a decision, they're not alone. You are their resource, and you have the responsibility as well to support them in making good ethical decisions at a program. So right now I'm going to share this. I'm going to share PDF. Okay, so this is the NIAC website. So it's a great free website. You get a certain amount of free resources. There is also a member login where you can get more resources as well. Many programs do join, and so their teachers will have some access to that. So if you do have it, that's great. If you're not sure, ask. You might have it. You might be able to borrow their login or only use their login at work. But it would be great if you had access to this. But they do have a lot of great work. They have resources about teaching young children, books, professional development. They have a blog, and they have their position statements as well. And so their position statements are kind of their core statements that they're known for. So the first one that we're going to look at is the Code of Ethical Conduct and the Statement of Commitment. So these are great. Both of them are really important, and they're very, very common within our programs. So we have the Code of Ethical Conduct and the Statement of Commitment, and it just goes into depth what we have as far as ethical responsibilities. So to ensure that a child's culture, language, and ethnicity and family structure are recognized. It would also be that there's vulnerability of children and their dependence on adults. And this is not something I just have staff read. If we are to do this in a teacher training, we go over in detail, what does it mean to you? What does it mean to me? What are concrete examples of this? You know, so an infant is obviously vulnerable on us to make their bottles, to rock them to sleep. But how is a 4- and 5-year-old also vulnerable and dependent on adults? Then it goes into principles. It goes into responsibilities for families as well, to colleagues. That's a huge one as well. And whenever we're having a ethical conduct, I bring this up with the coworkers so we can look at these types of things. So are you sharing resources? What does sharing resources mean to you? Because you could have a different idea about competition or resources or access depending on your background as well? Are they continuing to have professional development? Are we recognizing the contributions of other people that you work with? And then also, I like this one about your responsibility to employers, that you have to do what my program policies are. That's part of our employment agreement is I pay you, but you do what is outlined in the employee job description, and you've also signed policies saying that you understand what is expected of you. Then we have community and society as well. So it's just a really great resource. You should always have it printed out to show employees, and they should have their own copy as well, and they should be signing it to say that they understand it as well. There's also the Code of Ethical Conduct brochure, and then I wanted to also show you, there's 2 PDFs. I will put these on Canvas for you so you can access them, but there's the Code of Ethical Conduct for Early Childhood Adult Educators. So this is a great one as well. This is something that I definitely use a lot because I am educating adults about child development and education. So what are my ethical responsibilities to adults who are learning? So if you were a mentor, a coach, or if being supportive of your staff as an employer was really, really important to you, you would definitely want to take this off Canvas, print it out, and start looking through it, because it has important things that we need to understand when we're looking at adult learners. So to fairly and equitably assess what adult learners know and are able to do, honor confidentiality, sharing only necessary information about an adult learner. So that's really important at community colleges. We don't just release information about anybody, but if you were also a mentor or a coach of an adult learner, you couldn't just go around telling everybody, oh yeah, she's totally struggling with her. She doesn't get it at all. That would be really, really a violation of their privacy. An employer shouldn't do that either. You don't need to share other people's knowledge level unless they're being involved in mentoring and coaching. And there's also principles about colleagues as well, so other adult educators that you might work with, and your responsibilities to children, family, community, and society as well. So I will put this one on Canvas. I will also put this one, which is a supplement for early childhood program administrators, on Canvas as well for you. And it is all about, you're running a program, what do you do now? So they give you some conceptual frameworks, and then once again, they go into your responsibilities to children, to families, to personnel that you're working with. So that one's really great as well. To create and promote policies and working conditions that are physically and emotionally safe and foster mutual respect, cooperation, collaboration, competence, well-being, confidentiality, and self-esteem. So how do you support your employees in all of those different areas? Also does it with families, community, society as well. So this is great if you are looking to have a little bit more information about running a program. If you really are struggling with ethics or you want to have a more ethical program, I would highly suggest buying the Ethics and Early Childhood Educator, the NIAF code, this second edition right here. And then there's also sample activities. So if you were looking to teach staff as well, both of these would be a great way to train your staff. They're also available in different editions on Amazon if you wanted to do that as well. So I'm going to go back. And they also have standards for professional preparation, because professionalism in our field is highly important as well. So they did some differences in 2009, so they talk more about this. But they're kind of standards for professional, early childhood professional preparation is here as well. And this is a longer resource, but it does talk about our shared kind of professional values, what accreditation is, and how you are a professional. So how do you support people? What are your core values? What about diversity, inclusion, and inequality in our programs? How important field experience is, development as well. So if you're running programs, this would be a great way to approach what you think professionalism is, and also how you would try to kind of communicate this to your staff. All right, I'm going to go back to the PowerPoint. All right, sorry. Having some technical difficulties with my mouse all of a sudden. All right, so we just looked at NIAC, and I have put the link in for you guys because this is a great one about difficult working relationships, because we always have those with our employees and employees together as well. So I put a link also to NIAC, to this additional resource. So if you are struggling with people working together, then this would be a great resource for you, because working with other people can be tricky. And there are ethical considerations as part of our colleague and like working partner relationships as well. So understanding how you're going to navigate the difficulties of using ethics when dealing with each other, because there can be ideas of inequality, diversity, inclusion. It can have to do with cooperation, competition, the amount of resources, people's perceptions of how they're being treated, if it's unfair or not fair. And once again, teachers are going to have different values and perceptions and ideas about how they're looking at different situations, and that's where a lot of conflict can come into. So having a clear policy about how you expect each other to be treating them, maybe based on the resources that I just showed you, might help them start to navigate that as well, and that might help you support them. So if people are having issues with each other, how are you going to respond to it? Are you going to pretend it didn't happen? Are you going to ignore it? Are you going to come down harshly on both of them? Are you going to bring them into meetings and try to talk with them about it? Are you going to separate them out of the classroom? There are lots of ways that you can go, and because it's an ethical dilemma, there are lots of different solutions for it as well, both having costs and benefits. So how do we have professionalism ourselves when we're helping other people deal with these working relationships can be really difficult. So going to NIAC and using some of the resources that they already have can really help you, and that can be part of your brainstorming, is to see, okay, what would NIAC do? That's why it's important for us to have mentors and coaches as well, is if you haven't gone through this particular situation, I know the first time I had, two teachers really have a dust up in a classroom, it was a really difficult situation for me, because I really enjoyed both of their teaching practices, and I saw both of their points of view about this one kind of ethical dilemma that they were having. And I'm not sure that I handled it very well the first time that I did it, because I was really interested in them sharing their experiences and their feelings, but that kind of seemed to make it a little bit worse, because they were really interested in sharing loudly with each other, and it took some time to diffuse the emotions and bring everybody back, and eventually we just had to kind of break up that teaching team, and they needed to go into different classrooms. So it was kind of gotten to the point where they could not work with each other anymore. That doesn't always happen, and you get better the more that you do it, but also having somebody who can mentor you through being an employer, being a coach, and being a mentor will be really really helpful, because you're bound to make mistakes the first time you try to use ethics in a professional situation. So coaches, mentors, and supervisors versus employers. So there's kind of some tension between that. So are you coming as a coach, as a mentor, somebody who's supportive, somebody who's helping them understand and propelling their teaching practice, or are you their employer, supervisor, who is paying them to do certain things and could fire them as well? So there is some tension between both of those roles. So depending on the hat that you wear, you're going to have different ethical standards. For example, as a mentor or coach, if a teacher told you that they had left a child unsupervised, that you're going to have a really different conversation, an approach and way of teaching that teacher. So you're going to talk about supervision. You're going to have very calm discussions about what does supervision mean, and what are some practical considerations, and why was it so difficult, and tell me about your stress level. As a supervisor, I could probably do all of those things, but at the very least, there's going to be disciplinary measures. And if it was quite egregious, that person is probably terminated from employment. So it's really, really, really important that the person knows who you are in that moment. And that's not to say that a supervisor can't be supportive and talk about stress and talk about emotions and help propel teaching practices. It just means that they also have the ultimate responsibility for employment, hiring, firing, taxes, money, resources, all of those other things that coaches and mentors have been taken out of. So it's unfair to act as a mentor or a coach if you're a supervisor, if you're not upfront about your role and responsibilities and what you consider your ethical conduct. So we want supervisors to have some coaching and mentoring characteristics. That is a nice service-oriented and supportive role for a supervisor or an employer to have. But you are not a true mentor and coach, and you need to be upfront about what you consider it and what your roles and responsibilities as well. So clearly delineating who's a coach when you're coaching and mentoring, and when you're an employer, or when you're supporting, or how people can get mentors and coaches outside of your professional working relationship would be really, really helpful for staff. I did find this, I know it's a little bit blurry, but I did find this online. It's great about how we can do mentoring, coaching, and co-coaching. And I thought this was a great resource, talking about mentoring as a structured process for supporting professional learners through careers. And then specialist coaching is structured process for enabling the development of a specific aspect of professional learners practice. So we had Mary Murphy come out and do, she's the GUI leader, and she came out to San Jacinto in March, and she did a great professional development for us. So she was really, I would consider her like a specialist coaching, because she was really helping with art and process and creativity and things like that. And then we have coaching or co-coaching as well. And this can be also a structured process between two or more professional learners that they're embedding in new knowledge. So they're understanding and working and supporting each other through their teaching practice as well. And then there's some overlap as well. So modeling, planning, experimentation, listening, asking good questions. So if you could imagine that there was also a supervisor in there, there are some areas that they would all overlap. It could be listening, asking good questions, reviewing, action planning, modeling, accreditation, all of those things a supervisor, a mentor, and a coach would do. But then over here in the Venn diagram, a supervisor would also have hiring, firing, policies, procedures, staff meetings, things like that, that coaches, mentors don't typically do. So in conclusion, ethical and professional conduct is expected within every field. So any workplace that you have is going to have it. We have an added dimension to our ethical responsibilities and our ethical dilemmas, in that we care for children who do not often have a voice or a role in that ethical dilemma and responsibilities. So many of our dilemmas must rest in what is best for the child. So that's always our protection and our provision for children. It should really be at the heart of our professional and ethical standards as well. Thanks so much. I'll see you guys online.